Strictly speaking, we don't have scientific evidence for the categorization of body shapes. We haven't identified the genes for hip dips or fat distribution in the waist and hips, for example. However, for practical purposes, the field of cosmetic surgery has identified 5 categories that represent fairly consistent and observable patterns in female anatomy. And unlike the eugenics-inspired pseudoscience of somatotypes, these shape categories say nothing at all about what kind of person you are.
And even though these shapes might seem like a bit of astrology, they have very real applications in the fashion world, not just fitness and plastic surgery.
The categories are square, round, heart, A-shape, and V-shape. The square shape is created by higher hip bones and usually a longer femur. People with this glute shape often have hip dips caused by the larger gap between the greater trochanter of the femur and the inferior anterior edge of the iliac spine. Fat on this body type tends to store above the pelvis, creating love handles and further emphasizing the square shape.
Also known as the bubble butt, this shape has a fuller fat distribution in the middle of the glutes and a moderately wide and short pelvis,
contributing to the appearance of fullness in the glutes, as muscle is squeezed vertically and forced to protrude outwards.
At its extremes, this is the Kardashian shape, and it's the only shape that virtually guarantees no hip dips.
This shape is the inverse of the typical male shape, which features a tall and narrow pelvis, making the glutes protrude outward less. The heart, also known as the pear shape, is considered the most naturally feminine shape, with fat distributed lower on the glutes and into the thigh. The tapered look of this glute shape makes it the most sought-after shape for cosmetic procedures. Excess fat storage for this shape can result in saddlebags, where fat stores on the outer thigh.
Despite what you may have heard,
today we're going to work on the saddlebags and give these outer thighs a good burn.
You can absolutely not spot target saddlebags. You can lose fat overall with diet and exercise, and you can build muscle.
Males with high estrogen can also tend to see this fat distribution pattern. I'm sure you've seen some dudes with wide hips and serious dump trucks. The A shape is characterized by narrow ilium bones, long femoral necks, and large greater trochanters. Fat distribution tends to sit on the outer thighs and hips, so they appear to widen at the base, largely similar to the heart-shaped booty. The V-shaped pattern occurs when fat distribution is higher up on the glutes and tapering in towards the bottom, often associated with menopause and extreme weight loss.
This shape also tends to be associated with broader shoulders and a narrow pelvis. This pattern also often features a saggy bum look due to the lack of muscular volume in the lower glutes.
Women with this shape often have the most work ahead of them in terms of diet and training, but successful transformations are still very doable. Now, so far we've touched on patterns of fat distribution and bone structure of hips and femur, but there's another key element that determines the look of glutes: pelvic tilt. Whereas fat distribution and bone structure are not something we can change, try as we might, an overly tilted pelvis, whether anteriorly or posteriorly, is often correctable. I've talked about pelvic tilts before, but here's the Coles notes. An anterior pelvic tilt pulls your butt up and back and increases the arch in the lumbar spine. Some degree of anterior tilt is both normal and desired, but too much can lead to back pain and dysfunction. Posterior pelvic tilt pulls your butt underneath you, flattens the lumbar spine, and often leads to weak and atrophied glutes. In both cases, a combination of bad posture, tight and short muscles on the front, long and weak muscles in the back, results in this suboptimal resting position of the pelvis and weird looking posture. The slope of your sacrum also helps determine the look of your glutes. Someone with a more horizontal sacrum and a greater horizontal distance from the sacrum to the femurs will have larger and rounder looking glutes. Someone who has a more vertical sacrum and a shorter horizontal distance from the sacrum to the femurs will appear to have relatively flatter and smaller glutes regardless of muscle size. Good thing we can always make them grow bigger. So based on body shape and genetics, some women may benefit from different training emphasis: upper glute fibers versus lower glute fibers versus glute medius and minimus on the outside. But whatever the shape, training hard, training often, sleeping well, and eating right will always be the key to improving both glute form and function. If you do the work, I can guarantee the results. That's why, as Kingston's only certified glute specialist, I created the 3-day glute training system to guarantee you those results.